My name is Cadence. I work the closing shift at a small dive bar in the quieter part of town. It's right off the highway, but the parking lot has a back entrance that opens toward the neighborhood. Nothing fancy. Dim lights, sticky floors, regulars who all know each other's names, and a jukebox that's been cycling the same classic rock tracks since before I started. Most of our customers are locals, passing truckers, and the occasional lost tourist looking for something strong. I like it, though. The routine is predictable, the tips are better than you'd expect, and I've learned how to handle the usual bar archetypes: the talkers, the flirters, the silent drinkers, and the people who just want to disappear into their glass. Weekends get hectic, but during the week I close alone. No barback, no other bartender. It's slower, sure, but I miss having coworkers around. Because I'm by myself, I'm pretty vigilant. We do get the occasional bar fight or sketchy type wandering in, considering the crowd. That's why I noticed him the second he walked through the door. It was a Tuesday, sometime after 1 a.m. He looked to be late 40s, but he was unusually well-groomed for a man his age in a place like this. Black turtleneck under a black trench coat, everything neat and deliberate. He had that quiet kind of polish that makes you think of real money, not the loud, flashy kind. He scanned the bar slowly, then came straight to the counter and sat down. His posture was unnaturally straight, but I pushed that detail aside. When I stepped over, he glanced at the bottles behind me and ordered something top shelf without hesitating. While I poured, he asked if I liked working there, smiling in a way that came across as polite, not sleazy. It was a harmless question, so I answered honestly, said yeah, I did, and tossed in a light joke about bartending. I wish I could say I got creepy vibes, but I didn't. He felt like the kind of upbeat, good guy, single dad who high-fives the whole little league team. We chatted for a bit. The bar was quiet, so I didn't mind. Then he asked if I'd ever thought about doing something bigger. The wording was odd, but it didn't immediately feel threatening, just weirdly philosophical for 1 a.m. I gave him my usual non-committal bartender smile and told him I was happy where I was. He nodded, took a sip, and his expression shifted almost into disappointment, like I'd given the wrong answer on a test I didn't know I was taking. After a long pause, he asked what time I got off. That caught me off guard. I hadn't picked up on any flirting at all, so I felt that little sting of recognition. Oh, here we go. This was about my number the whole time. I gave a vague answer, something like pretty late, and moved on to wiping down the counter so he'd get the hint. He didn't push. He just gave me a look like he already knew, then finished his drink, pulled out a crisp $100 bill and laid it on the bar like it was nothing. No comment, no phone number, no see you around. He just walked out into the night. I didn't know what to make of it. On paper it sounds like nothing, but his whole demeanor sat in the back of my mind. Still, I figured I'd never see him again. I was wrong. About a week later he came back. This time he wasn't alone. The woman with him was what grabbed my attention first. I'd never seen her before. She looked mid-30s, dressed in a way that didn't quite fit her age, trendy but slightly off, like someone trying just a bit too hard to match a younger crowd. As they approached the bar, she drew my focus. Everything about her felt calculated: the overly bright smile, the way she leaned on the bar like we were already close, the timing of her movements. As I set down napkins in front of them, the first thing out of her mouth wasn't hello, and it wasn't a drink order. "You're so pretty," she said, beaming. Her fingers brushed my arm and lingered just a second too long. I laughed and thanked her, but a warning bell went off in my head. Something about her was wrong. The man didn't speak at all, which was strange given how chatty he'd been last time. They ordered drinks. I poured, and that's when the questions started. The woman asked how long I'd worked there, how old I was, where I lived, wrapped up as small talk, but she was too focused. I gave short, polite answers, but I could tell she wasn't just making conversation. She was gathering information. At one point she glanced at the man beside her, and the look they exchanged felt like a silent conversation. Then she leaned closer to me, lowering her voice. She told me she ran an exclusive event club. Her tone dipped conspiratorial, like she was letting me in on some big secret. She said she was always looking for young, fun people for private parties, and that I'd make a killing. 10 grand for a weekend, she said casually. I gave a strained laugh and told her it sounded too good to be true. She didn't miss a beat. She insisted it was all real, that lots of girls like me worked for them. Her smile never faltered, not once. She kept circling back to the same words: fun, safe, exclusive. Then, as if it were nothing, she said, "You should step outside for a second. There's someone who can explain it better." My pulse jumped. I stopped pretending I wasn't creeped out. "I'm good," I said firmly. No smile this time. Right then, a group of customers came in, laughing and loud. The woman's expression shifted for a fraction of a second, her friendly mask slipping before she turned to the man. Without another word, they both got up and left. I was shaken. 2 strangers had just tried to recruit me into something that sounded like a trafficking ring dressed up as a club. I told my coworkers and my boss about it. We agreed to watch for them. My boss said he was always only a 15-minute drive away if I needed him, and we had security cameras covering the entrances. That was all we could really do. They hadn't technically done anything illegal. I did my best to put it out of my head. A few nights later, after another closing shift, I saw the car. It was parked across the street with the engine off, just sitting there. I tried to tell myself it was random, but the prickling sense of being watched crawled over my skin as I walked to my car. I kept my head down, keys clenched in my fist like a weapon. When I pulled out of the lot, I checked my mirrors. The car pulled out too. It stayed far enough back to be deniable, but every turn I made, it made. I dipped onto a side street. It followed. Another turn. Still there. I knew it was them. I forced myself to stay calm, then cut across town and pulled into the nearest police station lot, gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles went white. The second I turned in, the car sped off. Nothing happened for a while after that, but I knew it wasn't over. One slow weekday night, the bar was nearly empty by midnight. I was wiping down the counter, half considering closing early, when the door creaked open. It was the woman. I immediately texted my boss, trying to keep my face neutral as I typed under the bar. When I looked back up, she was already watching me with that same plastic smile. She walked up, sat neatly at the bar, hands folded like this was some casual visit. I was about to tell her to leave when she said, "Thought I'd come check on you." My stomach twisted. I told her we were about to close and she needed to head out. She pouted. "Just one old-fashioned." I wanted to say no, but I figured stalling her might buy enough time for my boss to get there. So I turned to make the drink, trying to breathe evenly. That's when I heard it. The soft, definite click of the front door. I spun around. She was gone. A cold, sinking feeling hit me as I walked toward the entrance. Through the glass, I saw a black van idling outside. Without thinking, I locked the front door as fast as I could. A second later, metal rattled at the back. Someone was yanking on the rear door, trying to get in. I grabbed the heaviest thing within reach, a metal shaker, and held it like a makeshift weapon while dialing 911 with my other hand. I thought about bolting out the front, but something in me said don't move. I braced myself for someone to break through. Headlights swung across the parking lot. It was my boss. The banging at the back door stopped abruptly. A moment later, the van tore out of the lot, tires screeching. I ran outside and practically collapsed into my boss's arms. He said he'd caught the van's license plate as it sped off. When the police arrived, my boss pulled up the security footage. It was worse than I'd imagined. Just before the woman slipped out, the cameras caught 2 masked figures crouched near the front door, out of my direct line of sight. Another person was at the back, pounding on the door, clearly trying to scare me into running toward the front, right into the ambush. The plate number my boss had memorized came back unregistered. Nothing traceable. It's been a while since all that happened. There's been no progress, no arrests, nothing. The one good thing is that my boss doesn't schedule me to work alone anymore. Even so, I'm still on edge every time I have a night shift. I keep asking myself how they knew I'd be closing by myself that night. It still doesn't make sense. And more than anything, I keep replaying one thought in my head. What would have happened if I'd panicked and bolted out the front door? Music. I used to work nights at a gas station/convenience store off a quiet stretch of highway. I say used to because after what happened a few months back, I won't take another overnight shift anywhere. It was a small station, the kind that's basically deserted once it gets late. Most of my shift was stocking shelves, wiping counters, and ringing up the occasional trucker or traveler passing through. I remember that night clearly. It was just past 2:30 a.m. Even the truckers had mostly cleared out and the place felt dead. I was on my phone behind the counter, trying to stay awake. At one point, I stepped outside for air. It was cold enough that my breath came out in faint clouds. The neon sign over the pumps flickered, and the humidity made the air look slightly hazy. The parking lot was empty. No cars, no people, just the pumps, the road, and the dark line of trees beyond. As I turned to go back inside, something moved in the corner of my eye. I looked again and realized there was a person standing behind one of the pumps. I hadn't seen anyone when I'd come outside. He wore a dark red hoodie with the hood up, hands stuffed into the pockets. No car at his pump, no vehicle anywhere on the lot. He wasn't walking toward the store, wasn't doing anything. Just standing there, half-angled toward me. At first I figured he might be waiting for a ride, but something about the way he shifted bothered me. He kind of shuffled around in a loose circle, like he didn't quite know what to do with himself. I went back into the store but kept an eye on him through the glass, pretending not to notice. I was hoping someone would show up to pick him up, or he'd wander off. After a few minutes, he started toward the doors, slow at first, then in one sudden push he was inside, like he'd made a snap decision. He came up to the counter and just stared at me for a moment, like he was sizing me up. Then in a rushed, almost rehearsed tone, he said his car had broken down just before the pumps and he needed a jump. Or maybe just a little gas. Just enough to reach the next town. The story was terrible. There wasn't even a car in sight and he wasn't acting like someone stranded on the side of the road. It was like he didn't care whether I believed him. I offered to call a tow truck. No, no, he said too quickly, shaking his head. I just need a flashlight, maybe some help checking under the hood. Everything about him was wrong, the way he spoke, the way he watched my face after every sentence like he was checking off reactions. To be fair, weirdos at 2:30 a.m. aren't shocking at a gas station. Part of me wondered if he really just needed help and was socially off or high on something. I asked where his car was. He said it was just beyond the highway entrance, and then pointed at the security monitor behind me. I glanced back and there it was on the screen, a car parked just beyond the highway turnoff. For a second, doubt crept in. Maybe he wasn't lying. Maybe I'd just missed seeing it. Then a thought hit me. I had literally just been outside. If there'd been a car in sight, I'd have noticed. I stared at the monitor. Near the back bumper, something shifted. Just a small movement low to the ground. Someone was crouched behind the car, mostly out of frame. Cold dread washed over me. I forced a casual smile and told the guy I'd help, but that I needed to grab my phone from the back office. I turned away slowly so I wouldn't spook him. The second I was out of his direct line of sight, I slammed my hand down on the panic button under the counter. The alarm started shrieking through the store. I expected him to panic, maybe lunge at me. Instead, his whole demeanor changed. The nervous energy vanished. He stopped shifting, relaxed completely, and then smiled. Not awkwardly, not apologetically. It was a slow, knowing smile, like this was all mildly entertaining to him. Before I could react, he turned and bolted out the door. I ran around the counter and looked at the monitors. I saw him sprint toward the highway entrance and another figure, who'd been behind the car, take off beside him. They didn't go to the vehicle. They both vanished into the tree line. The car stayed where it was, engine off, lights off. By the time the police arrived, nothing had changed. The car was still sitting there empty. No sign of the men. No footprints leading into the woods, nothing the officers could track at least. Then one officer pointed something out. The front passenger door was standing open. Someone else had been in the car. There had been 3 of them. I gave my statement and surrendered the footage. The next few days, the police followed up. They'd had the car towed and run the plates. It had been reported stolen almost a week earlier, over 100 miles away. No one had come forward to claim it. No missing persons report attached. No other crimes linked to it. Just an abandoned stolen car and 3 men who vanished into the woods. That was months ago. I haven't heard anything since. I don't know why gas stations and convenience stores draw that kind of thing, but I do know this. I'm not working another night shift ever again. This last thing happened only a couple of weeks ago. I work nights at Walmart. It's not the worst job in the world, but after a while, every shift feels the same. The hours blur together. Same aisles, same shelves, same humming fluorescent lights. Most nights I'm in electronics, stocking and helping the few customers that wander through. It's usually quieter than the rest of the store. Not many people storm in at 2 a.m. desperate for a Bluetooth speaker. Most of the customers I see are bored night owls or truckers grabbing chargers and snacks before heading back on the road. That's why I noticed him. At first, he was just another figure drifting around the aisles. I didn't pay him much attention. But after a while, I realized he wasn't shopping. He wasn't even pretending to. Every time I looked up, he was there, lingering at the end of an aisle, hovering by the clearance rack, standing too still near the display TVs. He never picked anything up, never looked at a price tag, just stood and watched me. I told myself I was overthinking it. The store is big, and people wander. But the way he kept repositioning himself just close enough for me to see him without ever approaching, it set my nerves on edge. I reached for my radio, planning to call a manager, and that's when I realized the batteries were dead. Nothing but static. I was debating whether to leave my section and find someone in person when I felt a hand clamp around my arm. I nearly jumped out of my skin, but before I could say anything, a woman's voice rang out. Loud, friendly, too familiar. "There you are," she said, laughing. She launched into a bubbly monologue about how she'd been looking all over for me, like we were old friends who'd planned to meet up. I turned to look at her, completely thrown. I had never seen her before in my life, but she kept smiling, her grip firm on my arm. Then she leaned in, her voice dropping low and urgent. "That guy's been recording you," she whispered. "Follow me." My stomach dropped. I tilted my head just enough to look back. He was still there, only now he wasn't even trying to look casual. He was facing me head-on, watching. A slow, cold fear spread through me. I let her pull me. I didn't question it. Her grip, her tone, the way she'd started talking loudly like we knew each other, it all worked. I latched onto it. I was honestly grateful that someone had noticed and stepped in. She kept up the act as we walked, chattering about some trip or memory we supposedly shared. I barely processed the words. My mind was locked on one thought. Had he really been filming me? I wanted to check if he was following us, but I was too scared to look back right away. She guided me through the aisles quickly. I didn't pay attention to where we were heading, just that she was putting distance between me and that man. After a bit, I finally glanced over my shoulder. He was gone. Relief washed through me. I told her we were probably okay now, and that we should find my manager or security. She tightened her grip. "He's still around," she said. "Just come a little further." Something in me shifted. I thought, so what? What's he going to do in a store full of staff and cameras? Now that I wasn't alone, the fear started to ebb. I told her I was serious. We needed to get a manager. I stopped walking and twisted my arm slightly to loosen her hold. "You can let go now," I said. She didn't. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Come on just a little further." Her tone had changed. Less friendly, more insistent. She tugged hard enough that I had to plant my feet. That's when I actually looked around. We'd moved past the registers, past self-checkout, past the parts of the store that still had people in them. Ahead was the warehouse area, dimmer, mostly empty at this hour. Beyond that, the side exit, the one without customer cameras, the one the staff uses for loading shipments, and she was walking me straight toward it. The realization hit me so hard I didn't think, I just reacted. I yanked my arm free with everything I had and screamed. Her grip slipped, and I tore away from her, sprinting back toward the front of the store. As I ran, she yelled after me, telling me to come back, and then she called my name. My actual name. I hadn't told her who I was. That only made me run faster. I didn't stop until I saw one of my coworkers rushing toward me, eyes wide. He must have heard me scream. I told him to call security. He did. By the time I finished explaining what had happened, both she and the man were gone. Security pulled the CCTV footage. Just like I suspected, the man and woman had walked into the store together. She'd been with him the entire time. In one frame, his face was completely clear, but hers was always turned just enough that the camera never got a full shot. Every second of it had been planned. The police got involved and labeled it what it clearly was: a failed abduction attempt. They took still shots of the man's face. He should be easy enough to track down with time. What terrifies me most isn't even him, it's her. It's the way she slipped into the role of friend, the way she stayed just outside the camera's full view. And it's the way she knew my name, despite me never giving it. They hadn't just picked a random girl stocking electronics at 2 a.m., they were there for me, music.